America loves to call itself the land of the free, but hidden in the fine print, the word free comes with a few asterisks. For every modern law that makes sense, there's another one written by someone who clearly needed a hobby. Centuries later, those laws are still sitting there, old, weird, and occasionally still used by someone with a badge and too much time. We're talking about rules so outdated they sound made up. Except they're not. They're real, and technically still enforceable. So grab your popcorn, check your back pocket for ice cream cones, and let's count down 33 outdated laws still enforced. Number 1. In Alabama, it's actually illegal to drive blindfolded. That's right. Somewhere in the Alabama Code, someone had to clarify that cars and darkness don't mix. The story practically writes itself. A dare, a small-town road, and one guy who said, "Trust me, I got this." He didn't. The lawmakers stepped in, banning blindfolded driving forever. The rule still lives quietly in the books, a century-old reminder that every stupid idea was once someone's bright one. Nobody's enforcing it now. But technically, if you shut your eyes while rolling through Birmingham, you're breaking the law. America, where personal freedom ends right after you tie a bandana over your face and hit the gas. Number 2, still in Alabama, apparently the lawmakers also declared war on laughter, at least in church. A real statute says it's illegal to wear a fake mustache in a house of worship if it causes laughter. It sounds like a rejected Monty Python sketch, but it's real. Legend says a man once showed up to service with a ridiculous disguise and had the congregation cracking up mid-sermon. Instead of letting it go, officials decided humor itself was the problem, so they banned funny facial hair in church. Today, that rule still technically stands. Proof that somewhere in Alabama's history, holiness lost a fistfight to a mustache. Number 3, Arizona once had a problem no one else could have predicted: bathtub donkeys. In the 1920s, a rancher's donkey loved to nap in an old tub near his barn. One night, a massive flood hit the valley and sent that tub, donkey included, floating miles downstream. The animal survived, but the rescue mission was chaos. Lawmakers, determined never to waste taxpayer money on a bath-bound rescue again, passed a law banning donkeys from bathtubs. Nearly a century later, that sentence still exists in Arizona's law code. It's never enforced, but it's there. Proof that somewhere, one very confused donkey made history by turning self-care into state policy. Number 4. In Kansas, it's illegal to shoot rabbits from a motorboat. It's hard to know what's funnier, that someone once tried, or that legislators bothered to stop them. You can almost picture it. A man with a shotgun, a speeding boat, and one very confused rabbit. Apparently, multitasking wasn't as efficient as it sounded. So Kansas put it in writing. Stick to land for bunnies, water for fish. It's a law that feels less like legislation and more like a gentle note from history, saying, calm down, we invented patience for a reason. Number 5, Michigan still technically forbids blasphemy. That's right, using the Lord's name in vain is on paper a misdemeanor. The rule comes from the 1800s, when lawmakers thought moral order needed backup from local government. It hasn't been enforced in generations, but it quietly survived every legal update since. It sits in the state code like a time capsule, whispering from an era when Sunday sermons shaped law books. Today it reads less like legislation and more like a cultural fossil, a leftover from when people believed sin and statute were the same thing. Number 6. In South Berwick, Maine, there's a town ordinance that forbids parking in front of a Dunkin' Donuts. At first glance, that sounds like a coffee lover's conspiracy theory, but it's real. Back in the 1980s, the police department sat right next door to the Dunkin', and every morning officers would park their cruisers in front while grabbing coffee. Pretty soon, locals started copying them. The street turned into a caffeine traffic jam. So the town council finally stepped in and made a law. No parking in front of the Dunkin'. Not please don't. Not no loitering. A full-on ordinance. And they meant it. The rule still exists today, decades later, because no one's ever bothered to undo it. It's a tiny reminder of how America works. One small-town problem, one permanent overreaction, and suddenly, your morning latte is a legal event. Number 7, Louisiana doesn't just cook food, it legislates flavor. There's an actual law that says traditional jambalaya prepared in the open is exempt from state sanitary code requirements. In other words, if it's jambalaya, don't you dare bring a clipboard. This dates back to the early 1900s, when communities held huge outdoor feasts with massive cast iron pots, feeding hundreds of people at once. Health inspectors started complaining about the lack of oversight, and Louisiana responded the only way Louisiana could, by passing a law protecting the right to cook gumbo without government interference. To this day, it still stands. You can't sell unpasteurized milk, but you can serve open-air jambalaya to a crowd of strangers. It's law written with spice and pride, and probably a few splashes of hot sauce on the paperwork. Number 8. In Wisconsin, the government officially decided that lutefisk is not toxic. For those lucky enough never to smell it, lutefisk is a Scandinavian dish made by soaking fish in lye. Yes, the same chemical used in drain cleaner. When Wisconsin adopted its employee right-to-know law, which required labeling dangerous materials, the Norwegian-American community panicked. They thought their beloved holiday food would be declared a hazardous substance. So, lawmakers intervened, not to ban it, but to save it. They wrote an official exemption stating lutefisk was not to be considered toxic under state law. That's how seriously Wisconsin takes both tradition and dinner. The result? Somewhere between legal paperwork and Christmas dinner, a chemical-soaked fish got diplomatic immunity. It might smell like death, but on paper, it's perfectly safe. Number 9. Georgia's ice cream cone law might be the sweetest crime in America. The rule says you can't carry an ice cream cone in your back pocket, a relic from the days when horses were worth more than cars. Back in the 19th century, horse thieves used to lure away animals by putting sugar or apples in their pockets. But stealing a horse was a hanging offense, so thieves got creative. They'd stroll past a stable with a sweet treat sticking out of their pocket, and the horse would simply follow them home. Legally, that wasn't theft, just dessert diplomacy. The state caught on and wrote a law banning the practice outright. Today, it's still technically enforceable. Nobody's going to arrest you for walking sticky, but it's living proof that in Georgia, dessert once changed the course of criminal history. Number 10. Oklahoma has a whaling ban, which is impressive for a landlocked state. Somewhere in their wildlife protection code, there's a sentence outlawing the hunting of whales. No coastline, no ocean, no whales, but plenty of ambition. The law came from a copied section of federal marine legislation in the 1970s. Legislators pasted the whole thing into state law without realizing how absurd it looked on the prairie. So technically, if you ever harpoon a humpback in the middle of Tulsa, the state's ready to prosecute. It's become one of those unintentional jokes in legal history, a paperwork mistake that turned into an official ban on imaginary whales. Still, in a world full of reckless politicians, Oklahoma might be the only place that can proudly say it's been whale-free for over 100 years. Number 11. Connecticut has a law that decides the very definition of a pickle. According to an old state rule, a pickle isn't legally a pickle unless it bounces. This traces back to 1948, when two clever vendors were caught selling bad pickles, soft, slimy, and clearly spoiled, to unsuspecting customers. When state food inspectors tested them, they decided the simplest way to tell a good pickle from a fake one was a bounce test. They dropped the counterfeits, they splattered, and history was made. Ever since, Connecticut's food inspectors have technically had the authority to judge cucumbers by their vertical leap. It's a real law that reads like slapstick, science by slap. So somewhere in a state handbook, there's still a line that could turn the next farmer's market into an Olympic event. Pickles that bounce, legal. Pickles that splat, straight to jail. Number 12. In Idaho, love has a weight limit, at least when it comes to chocolate. A state rule makes it illegal to give someone a box of chocolates weighing more than 50 pounds. The law was written during the early 1900s, when advertising gimmicks had gone wild. One candy company, desperate for attention, began promoting massive novelty boxes as romantic gestures, the kind you could barely lift, let alone wrap. when one of them collapsed a store display and nearly crushed a customer. Idaho lawmakers decided enough was enough. They created a maximum allowance law for confections. A century later, it's still technically active because nobody's bothered to remove it. It's the rare law that punishes excess romance. A government-approved reminder that love is sweet, but moderation is mandatory. Number 13. In Nebraska, there's a law that bans anyone with a known venereal disease from getting married. It's one of those early 20th century public health holdovers. Written at a time when science met paranoia. The idea was simple: prevent disease by preventing certain people from marrying. It sounds archaic now, but for decades it was taken seriously. Clerks could refuse marriage licenses if there was suspicion of illness. Over time, medical understanding changed, social values evolved, and the law stopped being enforced. But it was never repealed. So, on paper, it still lingers. Proof that old fears tend to fossilize inside legal systems. It's no longer a threat to anyone, but it reminds us how quickly public safety can become personal policing. Number 14. Minnesota once had a unique take on sportsmanship. They outlawed greased pig contests. This came after a wave of county fairs where contestants chased oil-covered pigs through fields for entertainment. Spectators loved it. The pigs, not so much. In the late 1970s, animal rights groups started complaining that it was cruel. Lawmakers reluctantly agreed, but instead of banning the event by name, they created a broader statute against any activity that involves catching a greased pig. To this day, it still exists, alongside another clause that bans turkey scrambles. The result? In Minnesota, you can drink a beer while ice fishing at -20 degrees Fahrenheit, but if you chase a shiny pig, you're officially an outlaw. It's one of those laws that makes perfect sense morally, yet still sounds like a line from a comedy sketch about Midwestern life. Number 15, in Texas, there's a rule that goes straight for the eyes, literally. It's illegal to sell your own eyeballs. This one actually comes from a real section of the Texas Penal Code, designed to prevent black market organ sales. But the phrasing is pure nightmare fuel. A person commits an offense if they knowingly offer to sell or buy a human organ, including an eye. It's meant for transplant ethics, but once separated from context, it reads like a Wild West horror story. The law is still active, and while no one's been caught running an eyeball stand on the side of the highway, it technically covers you. So next time someone says everything's bigger in Texas, you can add "except the legal market" for spare body parts. Number 16. In Colorado, it's illegal to ride a horse while intoxicated. The law treats it just like drunk driving, because technically, a horse counts as a vehicle. This one actually makes a bit of sense, but it's still hilarious to picture a cowboy being pulled over for a DUI on a galloping witness. The law was written in the early 1900s when small-town sheriffs realized that ranch hands were skipping automobile rules by claiming their horse was doing the steering. After a few too many wobbly rides through Main Street, the state cracked down. Now, if you saddle up drunk in Colorado, the law sees no difference between your Mustang and a Mustang GT. It's a rare moment when logic and laughter meet in perfect balance. Don't drink and ride. Your horse deserves better legal representation. Number 17. Ohio's law books hide a gem of pure weirdness. It's illegal to get a fish drunk. Yes, that's an actual rule. A leftover from an era when tavern owners near rivers would pour leftover beer into the water for fun. Apparently, the fish reacted poorly. The state decided that intoxicating aquatic life was both unnecessary and cruel, and codified sobriety for all things with gills. It's one of those laws that proves humans can ruin anything, even biology. No one enforces it anymore, but it's still technically there, just waiting for the day someone throws a kegger at an aquarium. If that ever happens, Ohio already has the paperwork ready. Somewhere, an officer's dream ticket book includes public drunkenness carpe diem. Number 18. In New Hampshire, it's illegal to collect seaweed from the beach at night. The rule dates back to the 1700s when seaweed wasn't decoration, it was fertilizer. Farmers would sneak onto the shore under moonlight and steal giant piles of it to sell inland. The towns grew tired of midnight thievery and passed a law banning after-dark harvesting. It's still on the books today, technically enforceable under the state's Marine Resources Act. What was once a fight over slimy ocean plants has become one of the most oddly specific time restrictions in American law. You can grab seaweed at sunrise but do it at midnight, and you're a maritime outlaw. Only in New England could someone make agriculture sound like a pirate operation. Number 19. In Nevada, it's illegal to use X-ray machines to size your shoes. Back in the 1930s and 40s, department stores across America introduced pedoscopes, literal foot X-rays, to show customers how well shoes fit. Kids loved them, parents trusted them, and radiation experts quietly screamed in the background. Nevada was one of the first states to ban the devices entirely, citing health concerns. The law never went away. It simply got buried under newer safety codes. Today, it's a harmless relic, a reminder that even good marketing can give you a tan from the inside out. So if a salesman ever offers to X-ray your sneakers, politely decline. Not only is it weird, it's technically illegal in the Silver State. Number 20. In New Jersey, you can be charged with a separate crime for wearing a bulletproof vest while committing another offense. It's not illegal to own one, just illegal to be wearing it during criminal activity. The law was passed in the 1980s, after police officers complained that violent offenders were turning up in full Kevlar, making arrests dangerous. So New Jersey added an extra penalty. Commit a felony in armor, and you get bonus time in prison. It sounds reasonable until you read it out loud and realize the state literally had to outlaw being too prepared for crime. The law still stands today, unchanged. It's a perfect example of how American legislation can turn even safety equipment into evidence. Number 21. Louisiana shows up again. This time with a pizza-based misdemeanor. It's illegal to order a pizza for someone else without their consent. The rule was written in the 1990s when prank calls were the peak of teenage rebellion, and pizza shops were losing thousands in unpaid orders. A few poor delivery drivers became collateral damage, showing up at empty houses with 20 boxes of disappointment. Eventually, lawmakers gave the prank a legal consequence. Now, pizza fraud, yes, that's the term, can technically land you a fine. It's rarely used, but it remains on the books, a delicious monument to the early internet era's sense of humor. Only in Louisiana could pepperoni become part of criminal justice. Number 22. In Alaska, you can't push a live moose out of an airplane. No one knows how many attempts it took before that became official policy, but even one is too many. The legend says a group of hunters once tried to drop moose meat from a plane to save time, except they didn't specify which part of the moose they'd drop. The incident caused such chaos that Alaska banned any intentional ejection of live animals from aircraft. It's still listed in wildlife protection laws today. That means somewhere in Anchorage, there's a file proving humanity once looked at a moose and thought, "You'd make a great skydiver." It's a perfect Alaskan story. Half comedy, half survival manual. Number 23. Washington State once officially protected Bigfoot. In 1969, Skamania County passed a law declaring it a felony to kill or harm any creature fitting Bigfoot's description. The goal wasn't just belief, it was tourism and safety. Hunters were flooding the forests chasing legends, and officials feared someone might get shot over a shaggy misunderstanding. So they turned folklore into wildlife management. The law still exists today, reworded as a Sasquatch Protection Ordinance. It's arguably the most Pacific Northwest thing ever written, half science fiction, half civic duty. In a world full of endangered species, only one has legal protection based entirely on rumor, and that's how you turn a campfire story into public policy. Number 24. Florida might be America's capital of weird laws, but this one takes the cake, or the parachute. It's said that unmarried women in Florida can't legally skydive on Sundays. Historians trace it to a 1940s morality statute meant to protect female virtue on the Sabbath. In reality, no one's been arrested for it, but the language still exists in parts of old county codes. Back then, Sunday was a sacred day for rest, reflection, and apparently gender-based airspace control. It's one of those relics that shows how moral panic used to get legislative power. Today, every skydiving instructor in Florida ignores it, but on paper it's still law, meaning, somewhere technically, gravity is off limits for single women once a week. Number 25. In Arkansas, it's illegal to honk your horn near a sandwich shop after 9 p.m. That's not satire. It's one of those local noise ordinances that got promoted to permanent state status. The law began in the 1920s when sandwich shops doubled as late-night social clubs. People would park outside, honk for their orders, and keep whole neighborhoods awake. When residents complained, the town council responded with overkill, a nighttime ban on honking near delis. The rule spread through the state code and never left. Now it's part of Arkansas folklore, proof that one loud night of late-night snacking can echo for a century. Somewhere in Little Rock, a police officer technically has the right to ticket your midnight cravings. Number 26. In Massachusetts, patriotism itself is regulated. The law forbids anyone from singing the national anthem incorrectly or partially. That means skipping verses or remixing lyrics is technically a punishable act. It was written in 1917, back when World War I fueled national pride, and lawmakers thought altering the anthem was the same as treason. The irony? That same state also birthed most of America's protest music. So now Massachusetts stands as a place where you can question government policy. But don't you dare freestyle the Star-Spangled Banner. It's one of those laws that hasn't been enforced in a lifetime, but quietly exists. A ghostly echo of when respect was mandatory and jazz was suspicious. Number 27. In Utah, there's a law that requires every husband to provide his wife with reasonable sustenance and specifies the amount of coffee she must receive daily. That's right. Buried in early Mormon-era municipal codes was a line ensuring women weren't deprived of caffeine. It began as a protection for households in isolated desert communities where supply shortages caused domestic disputes. While coffee is now a minor doctrinal contradiction, the rule never got deleted. Modern lawmakers laugh about it, but technically, the text still lives in local archives. So if you're in Utah and your partner forgets your morning brew, you could theoretically cite the law. It's equal parts romantic and ridiculous. America's most caffeinated marriage contract. Number 28. In North Carolina, you can't legally play bingo for more than 5 consecutive hours. That might sound oddly specific, but there's logic behind it. In the 1950s, gambling addiction disguised as charity bingo became a statewide issue. To curb it, legislators set a hard time limit on games, treating church basements like mini casinos. The rule remains in effect, unchanged, unchallenged, and hilarious when you picture a police raid interrupting B14 at hour 5. It's a moral panic frozen in time. Today, most people don't even know it exists, but technically, the difference between a friendly fundraiser and organized crime in North Carolina is a stopwatch. Number 29. In Oregon, there's a law against using canned corn as fishing bait. The reasoning? Fish loved it too much. Back in the 1920s, trout streams were being wiped out by overzealous anglers, tossing cans of corn into rivers to attract fish by the dozens. It worked too well. The state's Wildlife Commission panicked and outlawed corn as bait to save fish populations. A century later, the rule's still alive, tucked into state regulations. No one's getting arrested for it now, but it stands as a weird environmental success story. Oregon saved its rivers from the deadly power of snack food. Corn, nature's most underestimated weapon. Number 30. In Vermont, whistling underwater is technically forbidden. It sounds absurd, and it is, but it originated in old 19th century municipal rules about swimming safety. Back when lifeguards didn't exist, certain towns banned underwater noises to prevent panic or false alarms from bathers. Over the decades, those safety codes evolved into an urban legend turned local statute. No one's enforcing it, of course. Mostly because anyone who can whistle underwater probably deserves a medal. Still, it lingers as proof that early lawmakers were trying to make sense of a world that barely understood recreation. They wrote everything down, even the impossible. Number 31. In Pennsylvania, fortune-telling for profit is technically illegal, unless it's for entertainment purposes only. The law was written to protect citizens from con artists in the 1920s who charged outrageous sums for psychic readings. But the wording is what makes it legendary. It basically tells fortune tellers to admit they're lying. So, if you predict someone's future and forget to add "just for fun," you could be fined. The statute still exists today, often quoted in court cases against fraudulent psychics. It's one of those laws that sits perfectly between skepticism and show business, proving that Pennsylvania might not believe in ghosts, but it definitely believes in disclaimers. Number 32. In Rhode Island, it's illegal to impersonate an auctioneer. Not a cop, not a doctor. An auctioneer. This law dates back to the late 1800s when fake auction houses would trick sailors into bidding on worthless goods. The scams got so bad that the state created a licensing requirement for all auctioneers, then made impersonation a crime. The law is still valid today, which means if you grab a microphone and yell "going once, going twice" without credentials, you're technically a criminal. It's America's strangest fraud prevention, protecting the economy one fake gavel at a time. Number 33. And finally, in Alaska again, you can't wake a sleeping bear to take a photo. That's not just advice, it's actual law under wildlife safety statutes. Tourists used to get too close for the perfect shot, and several never lived to frame it. So, the state codified common sense. If it's furry and snoring, leave it alone. The law still stands today, a quiet triumph of reason in a world full of viral video attempts. In Alaska, nature always gets the last word. And somewhere out there, a bear's still sleeping peacefully, blissfully unaware that it's been legally protected from Instagram. America's laws are like old furniture, outdated, dusty, but too weird to throw away. We may laugh at them now, but they remind us that common sense always shows up late to the party. If you enjoyed the ride through history's strangest rule book, hit subscribe before someone makes it illegal to laugh at the law.